Hi, I'm Kristen, and this is part 4 of my series on the modern spiritualist church. And today I'll be talking about the reason why I left the religion of spiritualism. Because these are my personal experiences and they were very specific to one location in particular, I'm going to be as vague as I can about specific people and specific circumstances that occurred, but they all played a role in me kind of releasing my membership from the church and walking away. So the very first thing that kind of marred my experience with spiritualism happened right as I was joining the church as a member. So right when I had joined, there was a new minister that had been added to this church, and I was not familiar with being a member of any church, the process that goes into vetting somebody, the process that goes into bringing somebody on and making sure that they should really be there. So that wasn't something that I was privy to. I was just somebody that was coming to church on Sunday and really just relating to a lot of other people who connected to religion through mediumship and through those who have passed. A lot of the people that were in the church were people that found religion through having their own personal kind of paranormal experiences. And so, because that was my focus, I wasn't focused on the minister. It just didn't really matter to me. Um, and so, this minister, he the best way I could put it was he looked a little bit shady. So he would sweat a lot and he would wring his hands a lot, and so he ended up teaching the mediumship class, the mental mediumship class that I was taking when I first joined the church. And I remember when he was first teaching us about psychic gifts versus mediumship gifts, he mentioned that a psychic interaction would be tapping into somebody's energy that's across from you or pulling their energy into you in order to receive information about their life or their future or just anything that's specific to them, rather than going up to source or going up to spirit or going to a different dimension in order to get messages from spirit, which comes just from a different level, a different plane. And so in one of these exercises with this new minister, I was paired up as his partner. And this sticks out in my mind clear as day, even after all of these years, that we sat across from each other, and it was just a kind of small practice where we were told to kind of read the person in front of you. And so, because he was the person that I was paired with, I kind of tried to extend my energy into his. And I immediately felt like there was a wall up, a block up. And I kind of sat there and I was sitting with it, and I was just thinking to myself, like, is there anything I could pick up at all, like, about this man's um, interests, even about his family, even if it's not bringing through spirit directly? Is there anything that I could tell about his childhood? Just anything. And it was very clear that he was putting up some type of a wall, some type of a blockade, so that I could not get through to anything that was related to him. And so at the end of the exercise, and it was everybody's turn to kind of tell their partner, like, what did you pick up from their energy? Could you tell anything about their life or just anything that you wouldn't ordinarily know just from looking at somebody? And I explicitly told him, I feel like you've put up a wall or a blockade. There's, for whatever reason, I felt like there was just something that went like and made it so that I could not read him. And I very strongly like felt this kind of blocking energy. And this man, he kind of looked down, and I saw him start to sweat. Like, I could see his face turn really uncomfortable, and he started like grabbing his hands and wringing his hands like this. And he said, "Oh, well, like, I don't know why you couldn't pick up anything. Maybe it's like, maybe it will just be a little bit easier in the future, like once you've practiced this a little bit more." And he kind of just completely brushed it off. And now I know in hindsight that you should kind of never brush off your intuition. You should never brush off kind of what you immediately see from somebody. I mean, obviously, not everybody is comfortable all of the time, and sometimes people are anxious, and it has nothing to do with poor personal characteristics. But intuitively, if you feel like somebody is putting up a wall, and specifically if it's during a time when you're explicitly trying to share with another person and you're trying to connect with them over anything, obviously that was a red flag. And I was confused at the time, and I was young at the time, and so I didn't read too much into it, but I did think it was very strange. So not too long after that, this minister ended up being arrested, and came to find out that he had lots of explicit child material that were on his computer and hard drives. And he ended up getting sentenced to about 7 years in prison. And so that left a really horrible taste in my mouth. It was horrific to hear that this person that I had been speaking to every week and been taking classes with, he was this despicable, horrible human being. And we came to find out from one of the church members that stayed in contact with him, there was one particular woman who had a lot of empathy and said, well, people make mistakes. And we found out from her speaking to him that he had his home raided before he even moved to our area where the church was. The police, FBI had come in and taken everything. And so he knew that pretty much he was caught and that he was going to be arrested. And yet he moved from one state to another. He came into our church and accepted a role as a minister, knowing that it would put this stain and this awful mark on the church, like in addition to just everything that he should be held accountable for. It was like he was just like spreading this disease and spreading this kind of evil outside of himself instead of just kind of owning up to what he had done and just waiting to go to prison. It's instead he kind of fled, and then he brought that rottenness to the church that I was attending as well. And so that was horrible. And to this day, I'm really mad about it. I really hope that there is karma for this man, and in this life and the next. And that's really where I'm going to leave it. While all of this was going on, I was brought on as a new board member, and we moved into having rotating guest ministers. And so there were people from all over the state and sometimes from nearby states that would come in and they would have their sermons on Sunday. And that was nice. There was a lot of like really nice, genuine people that had been ministers for many, many years. So I had no problems with that. And I continued on as a board member. But my time on the board of a church was not fun. It's not something that I would recommend to people unless they are complete go-getters and they have a really strict way of running an organization. But the experience that I had within my church was no good. So there was a lot of infighting. And as I said, I'm not going to get into personal details. It just wouldn't be right. But one person might be arguing with another person because certain things were authorized to be fixed or done within the church, but the contractor wasn't approved and it didn't go through everybody on the board before a contractor was chosen, or the amount of money that was going to be spent on some certain type of renovation, like that wasn't okayed by everybody first. And there were other people that were like, again, it would just like being a lot of bickering. And so you'd hear somebody say like, well, it has to get done, so I just decided to do it myself. And so it's like you had hard-headedness and fighting and pettiness. And I remember at one point one of the board members kind of like left a microphone on and just started recording to see what they could find out about what people were saying about them behind their back. And it was just like a really bad kind of environment. It was no good. It was no fun. It was seeing that these people that should have been really rooted in their spirituality and their religion, and just seeing that there was so much ego involved in wanting to be on the board of a church and kind of putting somebody's own wants and needs and urgency over strict ways of how things should be done. It was just that was not fun for me, and I kind of left the board as quickly as I could. And I think there were a few other board members that left around the same time as I did and went their separate ways and joined other kinds of groups instead of devoting their extra spare time to being on the board. And so after I left the board, I still did keep attending the church for a little while. I became more distant over time. But then what started happening to other church members kind of affected how I thought about the religion as a whole. So one of my friends that was in the church, she ended up getting a bit sick. And during one of these times that she was at home and feeling really unwell, she said that Jesus just appeared in her room. I think like she was in her living room. He just appeared standing there, and then he flashed away. And I believe she was raised Christian, but ended up leaving the Catholic Church, I believe, when she was younger, and was not expecting to ever see Jesus. I'm not even sure if she even believed in Jesus, which might have been a reason why she left the church to begin with. But she mentioned that he was there when she was going through like one of the toughest, worst times in her life. And at that time, I didn't know if Jesus was an actual person who had lived. And I know that a lot of people still question whether he was an actual person, but I mean, obviously, we have a lot of historical records now that show that he did. Um, but at that time, I couldn't really conceive or wrap my head around him being an actual person and not just a person discussed in a book. Like the fact that he had an actual spirit and he was coming through to somebody from another religion was kind of mind-boggling to me. So I remember there was about a week that I kind of was just sitting with that story that my friend told me and wondering about it and not understanding kind of where to go from here, and if Christianity is real and Jesus is actually appearing to people, like what does that mean for what I'm doing and what I'm thinking, as far as going to church and really only putting all my belief in God because spirits are coming through to people. And so it wasn't too long after that that there was another person in my church that ended up seeing Jesus. And she was actually sitting in church on a Sunday, and it was a bright, beautiful day. And she said that the rays of light were coming in through the glass, like the stained glass window. And she said that she saw Jesus appear floating above the congregation, and he had like that kind of heart in his chest that kind of has like the rays of light kind of spilling out of it. And she said that he wasn't only there for a second. It seemed like she saw him for a minute or two, and then she said he was gone. And so after, like, as soon as the service ended and people were allowed to kind of talk and walk around, she was like, did anybody else see that? Did anybody see it? And it was like this kind of miraculous event for her. And I didn't see it and nobody else did, but I believe that spirit can kind of project itself into people's minds and show itself to one person while another person might not see anything. So I didn't doubt that she had the experience that she had and that Jesus did come through to her. And again, this was another woman who did not consider herself Christian at all. And if I remember her background correctly, I don't even think that she came from a Christian church at all and left. I think that she just never really had a religion, wasn't raised with anything, and she found herself being drawn to spiritualism. So the fact that she had seen him was, and then again, within such a short amount of time of my other friend seeing him, and she wasn't talking about that story to everybody. I don't even believe that she was really going back to church that often while she was recuperating. Um, so the two events were completely unrelated, and the second person that saw Jesus, I don't believe could have been influenced by having heard the story from this other person, because it was private. And so that, again, it had the wheels turning in my head, and I was just thinking, like, well, if Jesus is showing up repeatedly to people in my church, like, does that mean that I'm next? And I did end up seeing him. I want to say within a year after moving out of state and leaving the church, and um, it's something that kind of rocked my world. It was shocking. It was destabilizing. It made me really start digging into, like, what on earth am I believing? And as I started thinking more about, like, well, the tenets of spiritualism, which are so rooted in I believe in God because God has shown us that the soul continues through mediumship and through spirits coming back. I just kept thinking, it's like, but that's so small. It's it's such a small part of what reality is, what our existence is, what the universe is, everything that can and will ever happen to us, to narrow down an entire religion just to thinking, well, spirits came back, ghosts came back. I saw a ghost, and so this is now going to dictate what I think about God. Um, it just felt like it wasn't enough, and it didn't encompass enough. And again, because all of spiritualism kind of displays proof of the afterlife, gives us proof of God. That was the main kind of message that was given out by the church. But then my mind would just keep coming back to, what is God? But what's God? Again, if spirits and ghosts appear around people and give communications to people, and all of this is supposed to have us believe in God, like, well, where is God in all of this? Why isn't he or it, divine intelligence? Why aren't more people talking about him giving direct messages instead of spirits? Or why isn't he or it appearing in people's rooms instead of spirits and ghosts? And it was just something that I could never really square up in my mind. Yeah, the existence of the human soul continuing on is beautiful, and it's wonderful that God gave us this capability of transcending beyond this physical incarnation in this life into another one. It is the tip of the iceberg to kind of look at that, but you're not seeing the entire underlying foundation of what God is or what it really means, as far as playing an active role in your life. And so, yeah, after I started having all these thoughts and I started kind of really processing, well, what is God? What role does God have in my life? And where on earth does Jesus fit into all of this? It really had me questioning my faith. It had me questioning why I was attending the church that I was attending. And I did end up ultimately leaving, and I have not joined any other churches. I have not joined any other religion. I don't believe in any particular organized religion. Um, yeah, I don't think that it's something that our minds can really be wrapped around. Um, we're just too tiny in comparison to like what God is and all of existence to really truly figure it out. We can get inklings and we can get messages, but they're only a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of the entire overall puzzle. Um, so I would say that where I stand now is I believe in God. I believe that I receive communications from God and his messengers, and I receive communications from these beings that seem to be spiritual and seem to be doing a certain type of work in regards to doing the best for the human spirit and doing the best for the human soul in order to kind of pay respect to God. But I don't have any kind of hard and fixed beliefs or rules in regards to religion and spirituality, just because I know that my thoughts have already changed dramatically, and they can change dramatically again if I had new experiences or very clear experiences showing me that reality exists in a certain way and God interacts with us in a certain way. All I know is that he or it exists, and he's here, he's listening to everything, he knows everything, and intervenes, probably a lot more than most people are aware of. um, so yeah, if you have any other questions about the Spiritualist Church, or any of the kinds of things that I was talking about today that kind of led me away from the church, please let me know and I would be happy to answer. So thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.